Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
I'm chilling, bro. It feels like, I said this every podcast, but as we get closer to the NBA trade deadline, it feels like the chaos around the league is just turning up a notch. Of course, the injuries around the league, there's a couple of players that have went down, a couple of players that are coming back. Things are starting to stir up as far as the trade market, where it feels like some of these names that have been floating around for the last couple of weeks might actually start to get some traction. TV, I'm just hoping that we are not getting hoodwinked and bamboozled and we actually see some pretty interesting moves. Because there's been a lot of nice names, but not a lot of nice packages to make it feel like those guys are actually going to be on the move. I hope we actually see some trades, man.
100%. I mean, it feels like when there's smoke, there's fire. But right now, it's kind of like, not smoke per se, but it feels like, little firecrackers, here and there, like on the side. So nothing much right now, but as you know, we're like 2 weeks away from the trade deadline, so we're going to talk about it in this pod eventually. And there's going to be at least some sort of moves. But whether how big or small it is, we're going to have to wait and see. But it's going to be definitely interesting. Of course, we got trade season coming up. But Jay, we are right now midway through the season. So we decided to do a little bit of an award show for today's episode, but not the type of award show that you think. We're not talking MVP, Rookie of the Year, all that stuff. Me and Jay have come up with our own awards. We don't even know what our own awards are. And we're gonna be giving out awards for the midseason. Try to spice things up. We're in the middle of the NBA season. We're again approaching the trade deadline. Let's look back a little bit at the start of the season and see how that can shape up for the rest of the season. So it's gonna be a good episode. So make sure you kick back, relax, and enjoy this one. But before we go into that, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at The Routine Jumper. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. You got the picks, you got the news, you got the clips, all that good stuff you could find over there. Also, check out some YouTube shorts there as well, because we've been absolutely killing it over there. Almost at 100 subscribers. Guys, come on, get those numbers up. We're almost at 100 subscribers on YouTube, so continue to support us over there. Speaking of YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening on any of the podcast networks, Spotify or Apple, please leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, are you ready to get into this?
Yes, sir.
100%. And like we mentioned, basically everyone's at the halfway point of the season. 41 games passed, and there's a lot to talk about in the NBA season. And we're going to be trying to give out awards. Again, not your prototypical awards, but we have some awards to give out today. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to have no nominees. We're going to go back and forth, giving awards to certain teams, players, whatever you want, maybe even moments, who knows. But we're going to go into it that way. So, Jay, you ready to start to get into this?
Yes, sir.
And, Jay, you got to take the stage here, man. The first award you want to present, player, team, whatever you want. What is the first award you want to award for the first half of the season?
Okay, so the first award I'm going to go with is actually one that's like not super groundbreaking, nothing that I think is like super outlandish compared to maybe some of the other awards we end up kind of sharing throughout the podcast. This one is a little bit standard, and it's funny that TV actually brought this up before we started recording, is that rivalry week is next week. So the first award that I went with was the rivalry of the year so far. Nice. And to me, right, the one that stood out to me is the one that I think a lot of people are clinging to, the one that everybody hopes starts to actually brew some kind of real competitive spirit, and that is the San Antonio Spurs versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, some would say the rivalry is a little lopsided and not in the way you would think, given the fact that the Spurs are 3-1 against the Oklahoma City Thunder so far this season. But this is one of those back and forths, more specifically in favor of the Spurs, where it says, wait a minute, the Oklahoma City Thunder are touchable. Wait a minute, the San Antonio Spurs are a lot further ahead than I expected.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, is there an MVP battle brewing between Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Victor Wembanyama? All of these different subplots, not even including the fact that the Victor Wembanyama Chet Holmgren beef brewed in as well, has its own little thing. And I say beef lightly because, of course, they kind of dismissed that. But I think that of all the different matchups throughout this season where we've seen two teams play more than once, their games have had the most entertaining, finishes for the most part. Their games have had the most storylines attached to them. I think the mere fact that everybody wants there to be a rivalry within within those two teams facing off against each other is another thing that really carries. Again, not a super outlandish award, but one that I think, especially when you look at the postseason. When I picked rivalry of the year, especially using rivalry week as like the baseline, I thought of like two teams that I hope we see play a high stakes 7 game series in the postseason. Like if you could draw up your perfect postseason bracket, even if these guys don't face off in the first round, and preferably OKC versus the Spurs, I would prefer it not be in the first round because that would be one hell of a spoiler early on in that
Yeah,
postseason. But
yeah.
that would definitely be a matchup you want to see in 7 games, and the fact that we've already seen 4 of them and they've been really entertaining. And not both teams have not been like full strength. Victor's come off the bench in some semblances. Jalen Williams has missed time, may miss more time. It looks like as well with his ankle injury. Like there's so many subplots to it, and that's a series I would like to see.
Oh no, 100%. And honestly, like this is what the NBA needed right now,
Hmm.
especially at the time where you have to remember when the Spurs got their first win against the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder were like what 25-2, I think
Yeah.
at some point at that time where they got their first win, and it mattered a lot because one, this Thunder team was on a crazy win streak, and everyone you have to remember the mindset everyone of that time. They don't seem as people now, but a big subplot to that, and a reason why we think that way, was the way that the Spurs handled them the first 3 times they faced this year. There was the, oh wow, the Thunder are not, unbeatable. Sorry, are not, completely unbeatable. It's the fact that, okay, Wembenyama, this team, they have the Aaron Fox now. They have the depth. Remember, depth has been a big thing in this series for both sides, where you have of course, the insane guard depth of the San Antonio Spurs, but seeing, people like Keldon Johnson and stuff coming off the bench and having big time performances. But now you could see, but the big thing about this too, and why people were super excited about it, both teams are super young. This is something that we want to see. Like you mentioned, it's been the rivalry of the first half of the season, one of the biggest storylines from the first half of the season. But with the way Wemby is looking going forward, and Shea, and especially with these both young teams going head to head, we're hoping that this is like the moving forward of. I guess what's a good example of this from back in the day? Maybe Rockets Warriors from
Yeah,
from a
I think that would
previous
be an
season.
interesting one where this is like a team. This is clearly a Spurs team that very similar to Houston, like understands like this is the squad you have to get through in order to get out of the Western Conference.
Yes,
And
exactly.
during the regular season, Houston did a really good job of being able to show that during that time frame. It was
Yeah,
during the postseason that outside of the series where Chris Paul goes down, everybody says if he does it, they end up winning that series. Other than that, the Warriors kind of dominated the overall back and forth between those two when it came to postseason play. So we'll
yeah,
see if that carries over in an interesting way too. I think another combination I think that could be interesting if you talk about back in the day is like Indiana versus that Miami Heatles team, right?
yeah. There
Another
you
one
go.
very similar of like understanding that these are the young bucks on the come up. You see someone like Paul George. I think that Wembanyama is a lot better than where Paul George even was at that time on both sides of the floor. Clearly asserts his dominance as a guy that like is not gonna just let the mystique of LeBron James, overwhelm him. Let the mystique of the big three with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh added in overwhelm him. And not only did he wasn't singularly like taking down this Miami Heat team. They had real dogs on the team that made things work. They had obviously Lance Stevenson, Roy Hibbert, David West. You have your
George Hill. Yeah,
George Hills, right? And I think that San Antonio is very similar when you think about guys like your Keldon Johnson, your Castles, guys of that nature. Like it's one of those situations where you look at what they bring to the table against this Oklahoma City Thunder team that like looks on the surface like they're just untouchable, unbeatable, and instead, the Spurs clearly have their number. Again, we'll just see what it looks like with come postseason time.
no, 100%. And I'm excited because, I mean, obviously we've seen them like face basically all the times already throughout the season, but with the way both teams are like lined up in the playoffs, you know that this is probably, I guess, not going to be a first round matchup. Like you mentioned, we don't want
Mhm.
this to be a first round matchup, but it's lined that this is going to be either a semifinal or hopefully a conference finals matchup. So things are lining up, and that's looking really good. I think rivalry of the year, that's a rightful winner. The only other team that I would want to shout out, this is definitely a low key one, but definitely something to look out for. Kind of on the east side of things, especially because of like if you guys seen the game yesterday, Pistons Celtics.
Yeah.
Pistons Celtics has been low key kind of a rivalry this year. All of their games being decided by less than 10 points. All this year, the Pistons are 3-1 up. But yesterday, especially, there was a huge storyline going into this. Funnily enough, again, we're in Rivals Week, and like this is actually a pretty cool storyline going into this game. But Jaylen Brown guarded Kate Cunningham from the jump. Like he was like because Kate Cunningham throughout the season prior to that game yesterday, 34 points a game, 8 assists versus the Celtics. He was absolutely killing them, and all 3 of the games prior, he didn't have as great of a game, but Jaylen Brown was like on him from the jump. So seeing these guys, especially with the Celtics being as good as they have been, it's gonna be interesting to see if Jason Tatum does like add a wrench to this when it comes to the playoffs. Because the Celtics did lose this season series 3-1. But the Pistons, if they really want to show that they're like, legit contenders in the East, going through, some of like the big dogs there in the Boston Celtics could be pretty good. But more of a low key one, but obviously the Thunder versus Spurs, clear winners of the rivalry of the year.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah. The first award that I want to get that I want to hand out, Jay, is an award that we're not going to go super crazy with the first one. It's an award I actually want the NBA to incorporate one day because the NFL has this, and I think the NBA could do this too. The Comeback Player of the Year award.
Yes, I like this one. Yes.
And if you don't know, in the NFL, they give up the Comeback Player of the Year award to either someone who, someone maybe it's a little bit older who hasn't like been as good in the last couple of years, but maybe came back at the last minute, a la Joe Flacco, or for most of the time, it's someone coming off a major injury, kind of like a J.J. Watt back in the day, who like coming off like a year-long surgery. We don't know if they're going to be the same player, but still having that exact same impact, a la Eric Berry, who literally came back from cancer and still was like one of the best safeties in the league.
Yeah.
And I want that award to kind of go into the NBA too. As we've seen, hopefully, people like a Tyrese Halliburton, someone like a Kyrie Irving could be like award like candidates for this sort of award next year. But I want something similar. But for me, Jay, for the first half of the season, the Comeback Player of the Award winner goes to Brandon Ingram to start off this year.
Okay.
I wasn't going to do too much. There's a few awards here that I was going to say. I was going to put some of my Raptors bias, but I'm going to put it towards this one award, and it's going to be Comeback Player of the Year. Brandon Ingram has dealt with so many injuries, especially near the end of his like New Orleans Pelicans tenure. He didn't play at I think only like the final like 50 or so games last season, and this season as a member of the Toronto Raptors, putting up some pretty good numbers, potentially borderline all-star numbers. Not gonna lie, 22 points a game, 4 assists, 6 rebounds, 47% from the field, 35% from three, and it's just given the Raptors just a complete other element that they didn't have for the last previous years, and that is just a guy that's to go and get them a bucket, and that has been massive for them, especially late in these games. The Raptors are one of the best clutch teams in basketball, which is kind of weird to say, but they've been actually doing really good, and Brandon Ingram is a big part of that. And one of the biggest things, especially with Brandon Ingram this year, and something I want to highlight, he's only missed 2 games so far this year, which is kind of insane. Again, looking back at his previous seasons, 18 games last year, 64 games the year before, 45 games, 55 games. He hasn't played more than 64 games as a member of the New Orleans Pelicans, and we're halfway through the year, Jay, and he's played already 42 games. So whatever's going on over there in Toronto, I mean, I want to shout out Alex McKechnie because he somehow got Kawhi Leonard through an entire season, so he deserves some love. Met him, absolutely great guy. But he's done some stuff with Brandon Ingram here, and even though he had that small minor injury with the sprained thumb a couple weeks ago, back on the court, back playing basically every single night, and averaging 34 minutes a game, which is the most since his early days with the New Orleans Pelicans. So I just want to say shout out to Brandon Ingram, coming back, getting healthy, and basically being a staple of the Raptors lineup every single day, playing like a borderline all-star. So Brandon Ingram is my Comeback Player of the Year.
I like that you incorporated Comeback Player of the Year because I do feel like this is one that should just be in the NBA at some point. I think especially, I hate to say this because this happened just the other day, but, Jimmy Butler went down with the ACL tear that's going to take him out for the rest of this season, likely a good portion of next season as well. And you think about those, right? And you look at a lot of the different players that have unfortunately been in those scenarios, right? And for example, like the running for next year's comeback player of the year could be insane because you could build a all-star starting five, an all NBA lineup, dare I say, of guys that are like gonna be on the shelf this year or have been on the shelf this season that come next year like could come back and be on absolute demon time.
Exactly. Yeah,
And that
for
could
sure.
be that could be a really big change for a team, right? And so when I think about comeback player of the year, I think another thing that's really important is not just coming back and being able to be healthy, because it's one thing to come back but be on like minutes restrictions and things of that
Yeah,
nature to
yeah.
keep yourself healthy, keep yourself safe, so on and so forth. It's another thing to come back and be an impact player. TV, we talked about Toronto so many times on the podcast, not just because of Raptors bias or anything, but because this season they've been a really interesting team to keep tabs on because of what they've been able to do more so on the offensive end. We've known from a defensive perspective that they've got the guys to fly around, cover 94 feet. Love what Jamal Shed's been able to do at the point guard position. A ton of Raptors players have spoken very highly of him, which is kind of part of the reason why Emmanuel Quickley's on the trade block right now, right? It's because of the fact that as kind of like a veteran leader style of point guard, despite the fact that he hasn't been in the league that long, this team has been able to really come together on the offensive side as far as sharing the ball movement, getting a lot easier shots within the mid-range and around the basket. Still not the best three-point shooting team they could be, right?
Yeah.
But they've been able to get a lot better in the half-court offense. And a lot of that starts with, we talked about this before, Brandon Ingram's ability to help Scotty Barnes not be so on-ball dominant as an initiator. People do not take into account how special having not just having a solid but a great secondary scoring option is in the NBA, right? I think like guys like Chris Middleton when he played with the Milwaukee Bucks, for example, despite some of the crazy discourse that would sometimes be brought up like by your Kendrick Perkinses of the world who would say like he's the Batman and Giannis is the Robin. We know the real pecking
Yeah.
order. I think it underlines a bigger storyline, which is that your secondary offensive creator is way more important than the stats indicate. Like Brandon
Jamal
Ingram, you can
Murray,
make
bro. Jamal Murray is like
yes,
the spitting
thank you.
image.
That's another really great
Yeah.
name to bring up for this year in particular, too, right?
Yeah.
As like a guy that is like, you find out a lot more about your team when you see how good your second guy is than your first guy. Look at what Jaylen Brown's doing this season, right?
Oh
He's
yeah,
now
a
become
hundred
a guy
percent.
who
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
thrusted into the first option role. We've said for years, oh man, he might need his own team in order for us to kind of see what he can really be. No, the left hand's developed. He's top 3 in the Kia MVP ladder right now this year. Based on the issues with Nikola Jokic as far as games played, Jaylen Brown might even jump up to number 2 in this conversation by the
Yeah.
time that the year comes to an end, right? You see how important, like we've always talked about depth in the concept on this podcast. We put a lot of emphasis on the importance of depth, especially because when this podcast first was brought upon us, when we first kind of started this whole thing, we started to see a trend in the NBA away from the big three, right? That was around the same time that we kind of started this whole thing, was a trend away from your big three and maybe having two really good guys and then strong depth, versatile depth around them. But we always talk about the 6, 7, 8, ninth guy when we talk about depth. But what about having a number 2 that can be a number 1 when you need him to be? And that's what Brandon Ingram has been. And to do that coming off of the kind of injury history Brandon has, that's very different from guys like Jamal or Jaylen when we have that kind of conversation. So shout out to Brandon Ingram. He's been more than solid. I wouldn't say gonna get all-star snubbed. I think if Scotty misses, then we
That
might have a question or two.
100%. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, then we might have a question or two. But I don't know if he'll necessarily be all-star snubbed, but I'm glad that you showed him some love, Raptors bias and all contingent, because he's been a special part of why Toronto has been what they've been this year. And they honestly could be better had they not been dealing with so many injuries throughout the start of the season. Because you
I
guys
know.
did kind of catch the injury bug
Oh, we
really
are right
early
now,
out of
bro.
the hurdle.
Yeah, and oh no, we are right now. Pirtle's missed the
Yeah.
last 13 games. RJ Barrett has
Mm-hmm.
missed the last week and a half. Like, hey, we're going through it right now. This West road trip is going to be awful for us. But Brandon Ingram, at the end of the day, like the last point I want to make about him is we don't see this evolution of Scotty Barnes without the addition of Brandon Ingram being
Correct.
able to, like you mentioned, to take the ball out of his hands at times, to be the go-to scorer. Scotty Barnes has the ability to be one of the best defensive players in the league this year. Has the ability to let his game be more free because now not all of the attention is towards Scotty Barnes because Brandon Ingram
Yeah.
is so damn good with the basketball in his hands.
Mhm.
So he is such also a big part when you're looking at Scotty's development too. So shout out to Brandon Ingram, comeback player of the year, on pace to be over 70 games, which is kind of unheard of for a Brandon Ingram sort of season. So shout out to the Raptors. Um, to the Raptors health staff, Alex McKechnie, I want to keep shouting him out again. Kawhi Leonard, even mentioned him when he was with the Toronto Raptors, how much he's helped him with his recovery. So he's doing some magic with Brandon Ingram this year, and I can't wait to see how he's going to do for the remainder of this season. Jay, your second award you want to hand out?
Okay, so my second award, I want this one to be something that again awards the play on the floor, and it's something that I think in today's NBA needs to be respected a little bit more. I'm surprised that there's not necessarily like an award for this the same way there's like an award for being like a scoring champ or like being the rebounding champ of the year. So I called this one Sniper Gang Kodak Award, and this is the most impressive shooter in the
Okay.
NBA. And to
Okay.
me, dude, the guy that I want to give love to for this is someone that I think a lot of people knew coming into the league this year that he had an upside as a floor spacer. But what he's been able to do for this Charlotte Hornets team, I'm talking about Colin Knueppel,
I had a feeling you
is
were.
if there's anything he's brought to this team more than just the on-ball presence, the ability to be a connector offensively, is the fact that this man is shooting the absolute skin off the pill, bro. This is one of those things where I had to look it up and I had to make sure that I wasn't tripping.
Yeah.
Colin Knueppel is third in the NBA in three-pointers made total this season. He is top
Yep.
10 in three-pointers made per game this
Yes.
season.
Yes.
As a rookie on a team with the kind of shot distribution, because let's be honest, right? The Hornets are a very all gas, no break kind of offensive hub led by LaMelo Ball when healthy, along with Brandon Miller when he's playing upright. And Miles Bridges, despite how you may or may not feel about him, is typically considered as a third or fourth option offensively for this team. And we're talking about three guys that average anywhere between 18 to 20 plus points a game throughout their tenure in the career, right? Brandon Miller had a really strong campaign last season before dealing with some injuries. We know what LaMelo Ball represents as a former All-Star. Miles Bridges has averaged 20 points per game in this league before. And Colin Knueppel just comes out and asserts himself as a guy that's like, you know what?
Seamlessly too, by the way. Seamlessly.
Thank you. Somebody who just like has been able to come in, really play within the offense. They've been able to run things through him. And for him to gain so much traction as an offensive hub and still be so efficient as a three-point shooter as a rookie. I think that's the part that's so interesting to me because, the thing that I always thought when it came to Colin Knueppel when he got drafted was like, I think he's going to be a perfect fit because I kind of assimilated him with like, not necessarily bar for bar, but this like Joe Ingles type of player, right? Very savvy with the ball in his hands, can be a secondary, tertiary offensive ball handler, somebody who can be a good connector, maybe be very competitive on defense. But he's like, this might be a little hyperbolic and I hate using white guy bias, but like, he's kind of doing some Austin Reeves kind of stuff for this team. And that's not necessarily what I expected out the gate for him, where he gets this increase in ball handling responsibility compared to what he had at Duke. And instead of like kind of being overwhelmed by the athleticism of the NBA, he's kind of found a way to like combat right within it. Right? Not the most athletic, bouncy guy in the world, but just kind of fits within all the chaos and has been able to be a good floor spacer in the midst of all of that. I've loved what Colin Knueppel has been able to do. Again, very surprised that the NBA doesn't have like a three-point champ the same way they do with stuff like scoring leader and rebound leader, stuff like that. But if I had to pick a guy who's the most impressive three-point shooter for me, I think it's Colin. I mean, literally, I think I looked at it and amongst like some of the top 3-point shooters in the league as far as three-pointers made, of the top 10, I think it's like Colin Knueppel and like Nickeil Alexander-Walker are like two of the only non-all-star caliber players in that list. I'll have to double check that, but I know of the top 5, they're the only 2 that are not all-stars because I think it's Steph Curry, Tyrese Maxey, and
Donovan Mitchell's
Donovan
up there,
Mitchell.
right? Yeah, Donovan
Yeah,
Mitchell's
Donovan
great.
Mitchell's actually number 2.
Yeah.
So, I mean, of the top 5, I mean, Conk and Nipple being right there at number 3 above Maxey and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, that's huge. And of course, from a rookie perspective, there's a million and one stats about fastest to do this and quickest to hit
Bro,
this
it's
and stuff like that for Con as well.
he's breaking the mold of like, we just like we expect rookies coming into the NBA to kind of struggle, especially with their efficiency, just trying to find their spots, not know how to do this. Like the fact that he comes in here and just automatically is one of the most efficient shooters, most efficient guards in
Yes,
basketball
guards. Yes, for sure.
is insane. 65% true shooting is unheard of for a rookie. And someone who, again, has a lot of responsibility when it comes to shooting the basketball. He's averaging 8 attempts per game and hitting like 3.5 of them. It is absolutely insane. 19 points a game. It sucks that his Duke compatriot, Cooper Flag, is looking now, starting to look like the superstar that we thought that he was going to be coming out of college. But in terms of start to finish, he has been probably the most impressive rookie. I think that when you look from like the start of the year, like immediate impact up to this point, Khan's up there, especially playing like in his 42 games so far this year. He's been absolutely phenomenal. He feels like, I know people have been, and the thing is like people have been hyperbolic over the past week, but I'm starting to think, agree with them more and more that he's on that trajectory to be one of the best shooters of all time. Because the fact that he gets it this early on to his career, imagine the refinement work. Imagine a full off season with the Charlotte Hornets or whatever sort of shooting coach. And when he finally finds his spots where he's absolutely automatic. Bro, he's going to reach like Klay Thompson, Steph Curry level like numbers in terms of shooting. And the fact that you mentioned, fastest to this many threes, he hit most amount of threes in this amount of games. Like it's insane what he's doing. And I 100% agree. This guy has been one of the most impressive shooters in the league. And when you think of valuable players going forward and like who can like fit into your team, maybe he'll never be a number one option, but in terms of him just seamlessly fitting into any sort of system, that value is going to be there throughout his entire career. And he's already showing right away like, oh yeah, I am one of the most valuable third options 3-point shooters because I can fit anywhere. And he's not like he's a small shooter either. He's like what, 6'7", 6'8". He can fit into so many systems. And Charlotte, you knocked it out of the park with this draft, but Con Knipple, excellent choice.
Yeah, I think that Charlotte, the funniest thing about Charlotte is that they drafted arguably as well as anybody in the league this year from a sum total standpoint, right?
100%.
And the crazy part about it is that they just have not been able to reap the fruits of their labor just yet because of things like the inconsistencies with LaMelo Ball on the floor. Of course, he's played a lot more consistent so far this season as far as being available. They've been bringing him off the bench a lot more as of late as well. Brandon Miller missed a good chunk of time in the early portion of the season. This feels like, if I had to make like an NFL analogy, it's very similar actually to like the Cleveland Browns of this year. Like, Cleveland Browns, if you look at what they did from a draft perspective, they actually got the defensive rookie of the year drafted at the linebacker position, as well as like a very solid running back. Of course, Shedeur Sanders is at the helm of that. He was drafted way later
fifth round,
in the draft, right? But you look at the volume in which they were able to hit, like nearly every single guy they drafted in that class was a real contributor in one way, shape, or form this past season. And Charlotte feels very similar to that. Like Cleveland did not get to see the benefits of having all their rookies hit, essentially, or just about almost all of their rookies hit from a record standpoint. And I think Charlotte's going to be in a very similar stance by the end of the year, where like they're still going to probably be picking top 7 by the end of the season. But you can say that we have a very strong foundation led by Con Knipple, but you have guys like Sion James, Ryan Kalkbrenner as well, that I think have been real strong contributors. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I think that they're one like really legit center away from like being in the mix in the Eastern Conference. I think that's why their name actually came up for Anthony Davis once upon a time a few weeks ago, or actually within the last week. as a potential trade option for you. But I don't think that happens if you don't have a third blue chip guy like Colin Knippel next to Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. I don't think until you get that third tertiary guy to make you feel like, okay, we really have a good ground to stand on. I don't think if you're Charlotte, you're ready to make that move. I think now they have to at least consider it.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a guy, maybe not this trade deadline, but even in the offseason that I would definitely look at. And I'm looking at a Nicholas Claxton for this team, and I'm like, that is someone that you would want to build with your young guys, 100%. And like you mentioned, every draft pick they've hit so far, low key, I want them in the play in. I low key want this team in the play in somehow. Hopefully, your Bulls decide to blow it up. Maybe the Hawks like go more into a downward trend, but I want to see this team at least like in some sort of like stake setting,
Yeah.
especially with the LaMelo Ball, Colin Knippel, and see how that goes. So shout out to Colin Knippel, best shooter in the league. I think he's definitely like worthy of that sort of award. Jay, the next award I want to hand out. It's a little bit of a two-parter because I want to give this version of award to a team and a player, and I'm going to
Okay.
call this the Cardiac Award. And
Okay.
what I mean by the Cardiac Award is these are the teams / players that start off the season super duper rough, but have found their way near the end of the half and look like they're going to be like, on the right trajectory for the second half of the season or for the rest of the season for a certain player. The team version of this award, though, is going to go to the LA Clippers. Because, like me and you said, Jay, we thought they were dead in the water
Mm.
3 weeks ago. And I made a video recently. You definitely should check it out. Shout out to LOL WTF Eric. But he's done a series with Chuck the Condor where he does this art every time the Clippers win or lose. And right now he is on the road to rehabilitation. And the Clippers win streak is just coinciding with that. They've won like 19 of their last like 21 or 22 games. They have been absolutely fantastic. Even Kawhi Leonard's not playing right now. Luckily, they're facing the Wizards and the Nets. But they've been looking fantastic. I think my prediction of them potentially going to the playoffs is looking better and better as we get closer to the halfway point of the season. But for a team that was dead in the water, for a team that many fans feared would just hand the Oklahoma City Thunder a top 5 pick, they've gone their way back into the mix. They're 10th, and they are I think for me the cardiac team of this year so far. In terms of the player though, the cardiac player award for me here, and this might come out a little bit out of left park. Klay Thompson.
Okay.
Klay Thompson. He started off this season, and honestly, let's be honest. Go back to last year as well. Looking rough at the start of the Dallas Mavericks, where he felt like he couldn't really shoot the ball. He felt like he couldn't find his rhythm, and even though he is one of the best shooters in NBA history, he hasn't looked like that. He hasn't looked like even like maybe a top 10 shooter in the NBA at the time.
Yeah.
But Jay, at the turn of the new year, he has finally found a shot. Over the last maybe 10, I think 10 or 12 games, 16 points a game, 46% from 3 on 9 attempts per game. Jay, this is someone who we talked about in potential trade talks for the Boston Celtics, the Los Angeles Lakers, and some people were like, is this even a tradable piece? He is not the Klay Thompson of old. But if he is getting into his groove 3-point shooting wise, and you're a team that's missing that, and who could just use maybe either a 6-man type of role or as like a 5th starter, Klay Thompson is no longer that negative value anymore. I think he's finally finding his shot, and he's hitting it at the right time, especially near the trade deadline. I don't think teams are going to be scared anymore to trade for someone like a Klay Thompson. So shout out to the Unk, shout out to the Youngtion, shout out to the Young himself and Klay Thompson. But the Cardiac Award, I guess team award would go to the Clippers. Player Klay Thompson. So I'm giving kind of like a 2-part award here.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought up this cardiac award because I literally almost did something similar and
Yeah.
I literally would have picked the exact same team. Like it's so funny that you mentioned that because when I thought about the Clippers, right, they felt like this. So the award that I was gonna come up with was Back from the Dead, and this was the team that at the beginning of the year we had huge question marks about whether or not they're really built for what our expectations are, right? Especially because I think this LA Clippers team, with what they were able to do in the offseason, right? Bringing in Bradley Beal, you get Chris Paul, you bring in Brook Lopez, you still have, you put in a position where you get John Collins as to help fill out that depth. Ivica Zubac is coming off of being, practically runner-up in DPOY. You hope to get Kawhi Leonard back healthy. You have James Harden. The whole shebang tells you that at the beginning of the year, this felt like a perennial postseason team that was going to be dangerous come first, second round of the Western Conference playoffs. Couple of weeks went by, we didn't feel that way anymore. Couple more weeks went by, started to really wonder whether or not they were going to end up giving that pick to Oklahoma City, where OKC was going to end up getting one of these top three guys. And although I still have my worries about the Clippers as far as making the postseason, we had that conversation a couple episodes ago. What they've been able to do now that they've gotten their in-house situation kind of figured out, and I hate to point the finger all at Chris Paul because I don't know if that's all on him as far as what that, because he wasn't playing. He barely was on the floor, quite frankly, for a lot of the foolishness that was taking place early in the season for this team. Whatever it is, it's starting to finally click for this team. And that makes me worrisome if I'm one of these other teams in the Western Conference, because all the Clippers have to do is get in.
Exactly.
All they have to do is get in. We know what Kawhi Leonard is as a postseason performer. We know that James Harden as a player, games 1 through 3, you might be afraid that a James Harden 40 ball is on your head in one of those first 3 games of a 7-game series. And all you need sometimes is one big win in a 7-game series to flip momentum, right? This is an LA Clippers team that I think if the switch is fully flipped, and I would not be surprised if they make a move at the trade deadline. It's funny that you mentioned Klay Thompson, because he would actually be an interesting floor spacer for the Clippers of all teams, right? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if the Dallas Mavericks decide to make that kind of decision. But I feel like they've got one move in them, big or small. Is kind of a question as to who they really have available in the market. But I think they have one good move in them, and I think they're a team that all they got to do is make it in, and that I would not be surprised if a lot of people started kind of listing them as like the dark horse danger if they're the 7th or 8th seed in the Western Conference playoffs this year. That's a great pull. And then for Klay Thompson, it's really interesting that you mentioned him, because this is a guy that we thought was falling off the bone last year. Yeah. Really was concerned that we had saw the cliff, as Max Kellerman would reference, right? The time in the career where it's like, okay, all right, Father Time's called. We don't care if you pick up. We're taking you with us. You know what I mean? And Klay, despite no Kyrie, basically no Anthony Davis. My boy only played 20 games with the Mavericks over this season and last year. No Anthony Davis. Started the year off with no real point guard, because D'Lo still ain't producing very well even to this day, and he was brought in to be kind of the pseudo fill-in point guard till Kyrie comes back. Kyrie should come back in February, it sounds like all the reports are saying, by the way. Klay Thompson, whether it's for the Mavericks or somebody else, is reminding us that he can be a productive player on a team with real aspirations. Exactly. And if you compare that to last year, Klay Thompson's his own version of comeback player of the year if you compare last season to this season. Just in the framework of, we thought we lost you. We thought we lost you. And I mean that in the most humble and respectful way possible. But last year looked like, oh snap, this might be the end. And this season is giving us the thought of like, wait a minute. He might have 2 to 3 more like productive years. No, he's never going to be an all-star again. No, I don't think we're ever going to consider him as a top 5, maybe even not top 10 shooting guard in the NBA in any given season. But maybe you don't need that version of Klay to still have a championship caliber 3rd or 4th option. And I think that's where he's at right now. And I think he's doing really good in that role. Now he just needs a team around him to kind of fill out, the other, 1, 2, and 3 options ahead of him.
No, that's 100%. And that's why I'm happy that he kind of gone into the streak now. Again, the stats I brought up to you were from like the last 12 games or so, where he's finally really turning it up from 3-point land, which is really good to see, especially from one of the greatest shooters of all time. More than anything, I mean, like if we talked about this with like Clay and Steph, especially earlier on in their careers. We thought their at least their games would age nicely because it didn't rely fully on athleticism, and they just had such a good trigger that doesn't matter at what stage of their career, shoot or shoot. At the end of the day, shoot or shoot, and they're some of the best shooters of all time. So we thought that was never going to leave them. And like you mentioned, we thought it was slowly leaving Klay Thompson last year. That's why we kind of like completely off the Klay Thompson boat. But this pocket right now, the fact that this is probably some of the best basketball that he's probably the best basketball he's played as a member of a Dallas in the Dallas Mavericks uniform. It's coming at the perfect time. Again, I don't know if the Dallas Mavericks are going to make some sort of run to the play-in. It seems like they still want to do that for some reason. But for them, you mentioned the Clippers. We mentioned the Celtics in the past. The Lakers who want to make a trade. Golden State, do you want to make a trade back for Klay Thompson? I mean, Jimmy Butler's not playing. You can maybe do something with the Dallas Mavericks. Who knows? Jimmy Butler for him and Daniel Gafford. Who knows? I'm just putting it out there. But he can be productive, like you mentioned, and that's just something that we want to see from Klay Thompson. This is how I thought his game was going to age. No matter what, being like a 12, 13 point per game scorer and still being one of the most reliable shooters in the league. That's how I thought how it was going to age. It came a bit later than we thought it was going to be, but he's here, which is good. As for the Clippers, I guess my last point about them, it's crazy because you see we talked so much about these like top teams about pace and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Clippers are bottom 2 in pace, and you really can't get them out of that. I've seen this from the Toronto Raptors. You can't speed them up. When you have Kawhi Leonard and James Harden on the team, you're going to play at your own speed, and no one's going to take you away from that. And they have two of the best slow-paced guys in the league, and they're doing this with the rest of the youngsters. Like, it's just going to work. And it's going to work for the Clippers. It probably doesn't work for most of these other teams, but it works with them. And I'm glad they at least bought into that identity, and hopefully they continue to play well so my prediction can come true.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what the Mavericks decide to do. They're one of those teams that fall into the category of have all of the trade assets in the world to make some kind of move, especially if you're talking about like fire sale teams. You think them, you think Chicago, obviously.
Yeah,
To a lesser degree, you do look at teams like Sacramento and New Orleans. Probably more so Sacramento. New Orleans is a little bit more of an underrated one just because they're so youthful. But you look at a handful of teams, with Dallas being one of them, where you're like, if they wanted to fire sale, it wouldn't be crazy to do. Klay Thompson, I think, does he fetch a first-round pick in this draft, this trade market? Probably not. But do I think that you can get a fair bargain that still feels like worth it as a team trading for Klay Thompson? I think you feel a lot better about trading for Klay this year than you do last. Yes. And I think that sometimes that's all you need because, I mean, what you'll have from a contract standpoint, I believe you would have Klay Thompson for the rest of this season and at least all of next year.
I think so, yeah, because it was a 3-year deal. Yeah.
I mean, for the right team, that's 2 playoff series. That's huge.
Yeah.
To have somebody with that kind of experience, that kind of winning background, and obviously like a translatable skill set that like on any team, like you said, shoot or shoot. If my boy can shoot 37+% from beyond the arc, doesn't matter who he play for. Just get him to rock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and he's looking a lot more like that version of himself compared to last year.
100%. I'm super excited to see whoever makes a move for him. Again, I want it to be a playoff team. Again, looking at the Celtics, looking at the Warriors, looking at the Lakers, Clippers. These are the type of teams that can use someone like a Klay Thompson who can just add that extra shooting in a space where you're not taking away, opportunities from anyone else. I think he can fit seamlessly in. Maybe you can even package it to get someone like a Daniel Gafford. Who knows? But definitely interesting to see. Shout out to the youngster over there, man. Klay Thompson and Unction over there in LA. They win the Cardiac Award, team and player. Jay, what's the next award you want to hand out?
Okay, so actually, I'm gonna take the award that you just kind of use and kind of build on it in a different way. So the award, I didn't end up going with, the Back from the Dead, but I'm keeping the theme essentially of a team that you have to now really watch out for. So the award I came up with is called Skeleton in the Closet. And it's a team that I've tried to keep nudging and throwing signals about on the podcast over the last couple of weeks. And it's the Phoenix Suns, bro. What the Phoenix Suns have been able to do this season, you move KD, you move Bradley Beal, and you ask yourself, like, are they really going to be in a mix in the Western Conference that's this deep? TV, they're 1 game out of 4th in the West right now.
Insane.
Jalen Green has missed most of the year. He's only played 2 games for them all season. Comes back tonight as of when we're recording this, so we'll see how that game goes in his debut. He's actually, or not debut, but his return. He's actually supposed to come off the bench for them as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see how he plays. But this team has been very excited to see him come back, work towards getting back on the floor. Dylan Brooks has been a 20-point per game scorer, has been very solid within his role as a guy who's trying to make a name for himself as a culture setter, so to speak. Devin Booker has quietly been an all-star candidate. Will he miss the all-star game? I think there's a world where he will. Is he deserving of being in the conversation? Most certainly should be, with what he's been able to do so far this season. By the way, did you know that the Phoenix Suns are the only team with a duo in the top 10 as far as 3-point percentage and 3-pointers made per attempt this season?
Oh,
They're
really?
the only team shooting the lights out where they have multiple players ranked in the top 10. I believe it is.
Conor Gillespie and Royce O'Neal have been like crazy from 3 this year.
Yeah, so those two have been really, really solid. Grayson Allen has also been a big contributor from beyond the arc for them.
He slowed down a little bit now, like later on to the season, because at the beginning of the season he was like lights out.
Yeah,
like lights out. But yeah, they've been one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league. Like they've been insane.
You know what's so funny about that is this team was so in love with the mid-range because of their personnel last year, right? Because of Kevin Durant.
Devin Booker and KD, man. Devin Booker
you look at their personnel last year and you're like, dang, they don't shoot enough threes, but these are 3 of the best mid-range shooters in the league, so like you got to let it happen. But it's like, no, look who you got on your squad, bro. You got a couple of sniper rifles sitting there next to D-Book. Let him be your mid-range demon, but you got a couple of guys who can really shoot the ball from distance, and they're making the most of it. This is a team that's also, I don't know if people realize this, the Phoenix Suns are top 10 defensively this year. Like,
hey, man. I mean, you get out the old
guy who makes you feel like they should be a top 10 defense. Name the guy on their team that's like, oh yeah, he's totally the anchor for a top 10 defensive unit.
Bro, I'm not even gonna lie. You remove Yusuf Nurkic, the man with freaking cement feet for cement per feet, and you add in freaking Mark Williams, who's one of the most athletic 7-footers in the league. It's gonna do a world of a difference. But again, they also got super young, so they're able to fly around the floor a lot more. With the addition of Dylan Brooks too, who seems to be a freaking floor raiser everywhere he goes.
Yeah, I mean, what the Phoenix Suns have been able to do this season, again, without Jalen Green as a secondary scoring option, getting more scoring from guys like Colin Gillespie, like you mentioned beforehand, who has made up a lot of that time while Jalen Green has been out.
Yeah.
Dylan Brooks being able to elevate himself into a 20-point per game scorer. That's an insane transition for me, just seeing the fact that Dylan has always been viewed as a shot chucker, right? When you talk about a lot of people, you talk about his Memphis days, for example, a lot of people felt like he would try to almost start feeling himself and take away from the offense as a ball stopper. And they talked about him in a way that it felt like because he was so in love with being able to get shots up, it would take away from guys like John Morant. It would take away from guys like Jaren Jackson Jr. When in reality, he has the upside of a guy who can be a high-volume scorer. He just has to be given the opportunity. Phoenix has given him that chance. I think that what they've been able to do, they've been able to reinvent the wheel for themselves in a way that, honestly, I don't know if we've seen Phoenix like this in any iteration, even looking back at the time with Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges.
Not like, this play style.
This team plays faster, in my opinion. They play a lot better around the rim, in my opinion. I feel like they're a lot more dangerous as far as point of attack defense compared to other years. And again, we're talking about a team that once upon a time had like Mikal Bridges as a point of attack defender. Cam Johnson, when healthy, was at least solid as a point of attack defender as well, right? This team just feels like they have a completely different level of juice on that defensive end, and it's showing as far as what they've been able to do as far as like things like opponents' points per game. They're a very solid rebounding team. I don't think anybody expected Phoenix to be this good. I think a lot of people thought it was going to take a year. I think a lot of people thought maybe they would try to maximize the value of Devin Booker and maybe dangle him out as a trade chip at some point this season, depending on how good or bad things went. And I think instead you're looking at this team like, okay, wait a minute. Let's just rebuild around D-Book again. And it's actually kind of working out in their favor. And I love to see that for them.
I mean, Jay, one of the things like before the season, one of the what we always do over unders for each of these teams, and we both looked at that 30 win over under for the Phoenix Suns, and we're like, why is it so low?
Looks
We
sketchy
were
from the rip. Yep.
sketchy from the rip. So we thought they were going to be good. I think we were all in agreement that they're not a 30-win team. But the fact that, and I think we mentioned this in like when we talked about that over under, one of the most dangerous type of teams is a team with no expectations. And this team, no expectations, especially coming off of last year, trading away KD, trading away Bradley Beal, and also having built this team with not the pressure of, okay, maybe if we play bad enough, we can get a top draft pick. They don't have their draft pick this year, guys. So they were forced to be in this position. And look at that. They're reaping the benefits of it, playing a different sort of style, now getting Jalen Green back in the mix. I'm not going to say this team's going to make real noise, but you just would hate to. I mean, who would want to face freaking Dylan Brooks in a 7-game series? And then who would want to face freaking Devin Booker, who's shown that he could be a playoff riser in a 7-game series? I'm not saying they're going to make a deep run, but there's a sort of team where if you're the top of the West, if you're a young Spurs team, if you're an OKC team, you're going to be looking at the team like, oh, we have to deal with these guys for 7 games. Like, they're just going to be one of those type of teams.
Yeah, Phoenix is one of those that I really feel like, if I'm going to be honest, dude, I just keep saying it. I've been bringing them up as like this kind of dark horsey type team all season long. It's just because I feel like the fact that Devin Booker's so good, the fact that Dylan Brooks just always is playing winning basketball, it feels like, right? And then you have someone like Jalen Green trying to, reinvent his image on this new team as a secondary option next to D Book. They've got, their coach and Coach Ott has been like really, he's put a lot of emphasis on the defensive end. Even when they were talking about, I remember I read an article earlier today that was mentioning the idea of reintegrating Jalen Green back into the fray of things. And he was like, well, it shouldn't be very hard to get him back because our baseline is defense. Like our team this year is based in first being effective on the defensive end. Offensively, we're going to make sure that we find areas where he can get to his spots and get him within rhythm. But things like being able to get in transition, being able to create stops and things of that nature, that's at the forefront of how we're going to win basketball games and how we have won basketball games. And it's translated. And I'm not surprised that he's so confident that Jalen's going to come back with, and barely miss a beat, because Jalen is a momentum player. He is somebody that I think needs to see the ball go through the hoop a few times. He is a player that I think has, one big dunk could really raise his spirit and by proxy raise the spirit of his team. I think this team is just playing with good vibes. And compared to the last 2 years, TV, sometimes good vibes is all you need to make a roster a little better than they actually are, bro.
Hey, man, the Toronto Raptors are feeding off those same good vibes this year, bro. It's definitely a big plus. Also, shout out to their new head coach this year, freaking Jordan Ott. Low key, dark horse coach of the year, because no one saw this coming for the freaking Phoenix Suns.
Definitely has to be in the convo for coach of the year.
The convo. I don't think he's gonna win it. Obviously, there's just too many good candidates. But Loki, shout out Jordan Ott, because he came into here, inherited a pretty toxic environment, and now has these guys bought into a defensive first system. 25 and 18 in your first half season, looking pretty damn good if you're the Phoenix Suns and you're liking the direction that they're going for sure. Next award I want to give out, Jay, and maybe you can help me too with trying to name this award. I tried to kind of frame it this way, but the way I want to phrase this award is the one move away award.
Okay.
Where the one move away. And this is awarded to a team who I genuinely think are contenders who are one move away. Like real contenders. And the winner of this award for me is the Detroit Pistons. We talk about them obviously the number one team in the East, but the East is so much of a dumpster fire so far this year with the injuries, with the up and downness, not knowing who's going to really come out. The Detroit Pistons can really, especially the up and downness. Freaking the New York Knicks have been horrible to start out 2026 too.
Yeah.
So the Detroit Pistons legitimately can separate themselves from the rest of the pack and be the clear number one favorites in the East if they make that one move. And the reason why I wouldn't choose any other team, because I feel like with a lot of these other like trade packages for other teams, it feels somewhat unrealistic. Whether it's the contracts coming back, not enough draft capital. The Pistons have everything you need that you want in a trade package. A expiring contract in a Tobias Harris, an expiring young prospect in a Jaden Ivey. You have a couple of first round picks you can offer. The Pistons legitimately have the trade package, the ideal trade package, to go after these disgruntled stars or a star on a losing franchise, a la a Lauri Markkanen, a la a Michael Porter Jr. Because I truly believe they are that type of move, one move away, and I think it's realistic from being near that level of a Spurs, Nuggets, and I feel like there could be that's the only like team in the East where I could see even make that jump into that title conversation. So, especially as looking at these last 10 games, the Detroit Pistons, one of the best defensive teams in the league, their offense doesn't go through anyone but Cade. Cade is their offense. Yeah. So, and we talk about freaking second options, like we talked about it early on in the episode. It's super important to have that guy that even if Cade has an off day or Cade has like a minor injury or something like that you can rely on someone to be that second guy, to be that Brandon Ingram, to be that Jaylen Brown. It doesn't have to be crazy because this team is so good all around. But they truly, I believe, are one move away from being part of that upper echelon in NBA champion conversations.
I think that Detroit is in a really interesting situation because they're a team that, because their turnaround has been so dynamic over the course of basically like a 2.5 to 3 year time frame, they're still trying to figure out what they need. I think that's another really interesting thing about them. And I think that's kind of represented in the different kinds of players that have been brought up related to them in the trade market, right? Like the name that comes up at first is like Michael Porter Jr.'s name has come up a ton for them as an interesting knockdown 3-point shooter at the small forward position. And essentially that's a two-way street because it's also allowing you to move off of Tobias Harris. You get an upgrade as a 3-point shooter and somebody who can put the ball on the deck, very similar to Tobias, but at a younger rate, at a younger age, right? But at the same time, you look at the Jaden Ivey contract and you tell yourself, like, we need another ball handler. Jaden Ivey is going to be up for a contract extension this upcoming summer. Do we get somebody who's already got some years under them as far as being locked up long term? That's why, like, Malik Monk's name has also been brought up with this team before as a guy who can come off the bench and light up as a scorer for them, but is under control for the next year and a half if you count the rest of this season and next season. Detroit is so interesting to me because the thing that stands out to me more than just like them still kind of being a blank canvas to a lesser degree is also that, like, can you name a thing that they don't do well right now?
It's the offense outside of Cade Cunningham. And this is like the stat I want to like bring up because I remember they mentioned this on the broadcast yesterday and I had to do a little bit of digging myself. Mm-hmm. Since the turn of the new year, the Detroit Pistons have been 6 points better defensively on defensive rating compared to everyone else in the league. They are at a 101 defensive rating compared to number 2, which is the Thunder, at 107. Their offense, 23rd in the league. 23rd in the league in basketball. And they're still winning a bunch of games. They're definitely creating separation of that number one into that number 1 seed. But in terms of playoff basketball, in terms of the depth that we're talking about, I truly don't think they have that reliable secondary scoring option yet. That's why I feel more than ever. I know we were kind of iffy a few weeks ago whether if they need to mess with what's going on. Obviously, they've been playing so well. Halfway through the year, I see them now. I'm like, you guys are literally a secondary scorer away from being into that upper echelon in terms of the Thunder, the Spurs, the Denver Nuggets, in terms of that type of conversation for the championship. And they have the pieces to do so. So go do it. That's how I see them right now. And I'm like, I want there to be like some sort of like foil in the Eastern Conference to the West. And I feel like the best chance we got is the Detroit Pistons.
I definitely I love what Detroit's doing so far this season. And I'm glad that you mentioned the offense being the biggest question mark. And again, I think that's one of the reason why I ask it is not necessarily because I figured that it wasn't an issue. Of course, that's one of the biggest reasons why they're looking for an offensive-centric player in the trade market if they are to make any kind of real move. The question just is, again, what that archetype needs to be. Now, saying that they need a secondary shot creator, I think puts a lot more emphasis on maybe needing to go after more of a star caliber guy. So it'll be interesting to see what that one move is. For a team
Yes.
that's had so much success with continuity, do you make one move that's for a big name guy that's going to take a little bit of integrating to make it really work, but it's going to be worth the risk if it works out? Or do you do a move that's a little bit more on the margins, that's a little bit easier to slide them into the offense early on, but maybe it doesn't have as insane of a return, it's just a lot easier to get them into the flow of things? That'll be the interesting question, because it also gives you an understanding of, like, okay, how ready does this Detroit Pistons team think they are? Like, do they think they're a team that in this version of the Eastern Conference, with the disarray that's across the top, the top five, because again, the Knicks look wild. The Celtics are playing above their weight, but like Cleveland looks questionable, right? You keep going down the list for the East, like maybe Detroit thinks they could come out the East like this year, using the precedent of stuff like what Indiana did last season as like a linchpin to say, like, why not us? And if they think they're that kind of team, they might make a bigger swing than anybody else is even really anticipating.
Jay, 20 years ago, I feel like they were in a very similar position. And at the trade deadline, they traded for Rasheed Wallace to go into that finals run, which they ended up beating the Los Angeles Lakers. No, I'm not saying this is the type of run that they're in store for, but like you mentioned, with the way the East is looking, it feels like you're one move away for the taking. This is the type of year you need to take the risk. That's what I was hoping for. A lot of these teams to kind of take advantage of this pacerless, Eastern Conference. The Celtics being not as healthy. The Pistons are the ones that truly feel like they're the ones who are able to take advantage of that. Make that Rasheed Wallace trade. Make that trade and say, you know what, we're going in for it. And the thing is, like, you're young enough to like where you still have a fallback. You're still super young in that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it. This is like literally the best chance you got in this Eastern Conference. And next year we talk about a bunch of guys coming like who are going to be eligible for that Comeback Player of the Year award that we mentioned a while ago. They're not healthy right now, so be able to like really like take the season by the horns and really try and go for it.
Yeah, I think Detroit should take advantage of this window. The fact that they've seen how they stack up against a handful of different teams, like this Celtics team you mentioned the other day. I think the Knicks are vulnerable right now, especially with the state of their locker room, it sounds like. Cleveland feels like they're a team that is starting to kind of rip at the seams a bit. I mean, once you get past that, I mean, like, your Toronto Raptors are very scrappy, but like, I don't know if Detroit's worried about them
Yeah,
just yet. I
exactly.
obviously, I mean, Milwaukee. It really depends on how this Giannis saga plays out, and that's gonna be determined on February 5th. Like, I don't think Giannis gets traded this season, but how much help he does or does not get will tell us a lot about whether or not they're gonna be a real factor in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Like, this may be a really good chance for Detroit. The question is, are they going to kind of, like you said, kind of take the bull by the horns and take advantage of an opportunity that feels very much in their favor, surprisingly, for a team that dealt with a lot of injuries to kick off the year too. They've just been
Yeah,
able to sustain a lot of success. That's big respect to JB Bickerstaff, who's turning around the culture over there, but also big respect to those guys that they have. We talk about depth all the time in the pod. They're 9 through 11 still productive, and it's really helped them out. Even though they're not this elite scoring offense. They do it gritty. They do it with having a number one option that's an all-star caliber player, MVP caliber player, and a handful of guys that just know how to play their role.
yeah, 100%. I really hope they're able to take advantage of this again. I feel like they're the only like true team out east that can, again, with this one move, can really is like the true like one move away team. Because you could say that with a lot of teams. Obviously, people could say they're one or two moves away from doing it. I feel like the Pistons are really that team, and that's why I think
Mm-hmm.
they're able to win this award. Jay, let's do one more award each. I think we have enough time to do one more award each.
Okay.
What is your last award that you want to hand out over here?
So the let's see. The last two awards I have are not necessarily as positive as the other three I went with, but it is what it is. Let's go with the one that's the funniest sounding for me. So the last award I'm going to go with is the Good Grief Charlie Brown Award. And this one is built off of something that I thought was kind of funny. Everybody knows the same scene played in every Charlie Brown special where He goes to kick the football, and Lisa yanks it from beneath him right as he's about to go kick, falls on his back, and is looking up at the sky and just wondering, dang, this was not what I expected when I came over here.
Yeah.
And the winner of that award is Chris Paul. Because, man, did he not expect what he was going to be getting when he got to LA, boy. Let me tell you something, TV.
No.
This was one of the funniest things in my life to follow. When I was putting this together, I was trying to figure out like who I felt like the award winner for this was. And the premise of this, right? Again, using that analogy of the Charlie Brown going to kick the football as the base, was that, it feels like everything about this season felt like it was going to be a very interesting farewell tour type of season for Chris Paul. And it's quite literally been everything but. I mean, he gets to the team, he barely plays. The locker room seems to not mess with him. They send him home while they're on a road trip. The team seemingly plays better once he's gone. And he's on Instagram tagging his former LA Clippers teammate, JJ Redick, now coach of the Lakers, sending the wink, wink, nudge, nudge to maybe see if the ops want to trade for him. I mean, TV, you can't make this up. If Chris Paul, knowing what we know about the NBA veto 8 million years ago, it feels like at this point, still finds a way in a year that should have been his swan song with the Clippers, ends up with the Lakers, might be the biggest good grief I've ever seen in NBA history, TV. Talk about a weird turn of events to go from maybe saying your farewell with the team that I would make the argument as like most noted for at this time.
Oh no, he is the greatest Clipper of all time. I'm sorry. He is the GOAT Clipper of all time.
To maybe potentially ending his career off with the team that's associated with arguably one of the biggest what-ifs in NBA history.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, bro, I just was I was following through this whole thing, and I'm just shaking my head. I'm just like, how in the world did we get here, dude? How did we get here? So, yeah, good grief, Charlie Brown Award goes to Chris Paul. I just can't believe that you start the season off and you see it as you're running up to the football, you see it as one way. And before you know it, you're on your back looking up at the sky, you done missed the football, and you're just asking yourself, what happened? And that's where I'm at with Chris Paul right now, dude. It's crazy.
What I find crazy about this whole situation, this feels like an eternity ago, by the way. This feels like this happened an eternity ago. But he is still, by the way, mind you, he is a member of the LA Clippers still.
Yes,
he is
he's still
chilling at home. He's been doing podcasts. This man has been doing like interviews, and he's like, I don't want my career to end this way. He's a member of the Clippers.
Yes.
He's still a member of the Clippers, and we're still trying to figure this out. What still crazes me about this whole thing, because you got to remember, Chris Paul, for lack of a better term, was felt like NBA fans' worst enemy for the longest time. Not a lot of people like Chris Paul throughout his career. The way, he was, a stickler on the court, the complaint to the referees, the knowing all the little rules, the basically rage baiting his entire career. Right. That's what Chris Paul was.
Yeah, right.
I never seen the NBA community gather around and kind of give a collective hug to Chris Paul at that time. I've never seen the entire NBA family empathize with that man. And they can't. You say that you can't believe he ends up back in the Lakers. That would be a hilarious, full circle moment. But the fact that at the end of the day, everyone who has maybe trashed Chris Paul throughout his time, whether he was doing this to your favorite team, he's one of those guys. I mean, we talk about it with Patrick Beverley, Draymond Green. You hate to face him, but you love to have him on your team. That's the Chris Paul story.
Mm-hmm.
So to see that every one of these fans that swore on this guy's life that he was their absolute enemy come around and just give him a collective hug, he's like, it shouldn't have ended this way, man. I believe you. Let's get you on a team. Let's get you that championship. No one was ever feeling this way for CP3. No one. So the fact that we're at this point, and the fact that he might end with the Lakers, is absolutely hilarious. So yeah, in terms of that sort of award, funnily enough, Jay, I kind of had a team version of this award where it's like, you know, so many good vibes going into the season, at the end of the day, and then just like everything just kind of going wrong at this point. I called this the 76er Pelican Award of this year, where it's like right at the start of the season, oh, you just knew that everything was going wrong. I'm not gonna make this my official award, but I will mention it here. I had the Atlanta Hawks. The fact that this is like
I can't even blame you. What is that team, by the way, right now? What are the Hawks right now?
that's what I'm saying.
It's
Like,
a question
bro,
of its own right.
we remember last year we said that the 76ers were the offseason winners. We made that
Mm-hmm.
very, very clear.
Mm-hmm.
This year, everyone was saying that the Atlanta Hawks, they have a team that's fit around Trae Young. They finally have figured it out. Trae Young and Kristaps Porzingis have played 30 minutes together the entire season before they shipped them out for peanuts. Literally, funnily enough, I said peanuts. It's freaking Charlie Brown. But I mean, um,
I was thinking it, but I didn't want to lay it up like that. But that's funny.
oh my gosh. I mean, the Hawks already hate CJ McCollum. They already hate that man. And the fact that what turned into NBA's darling team in the offseason, Zach Lowe was saying, this team can make a potential conference finals run. Completely swept underneath them, and now they're at the edge of freaking missing the play-in tournament. That's how wrong things have gone for the Atlanta Hawks. They definitely have time to turn it around, but damn, coming from what they were at the beginning of the season, it's tough. But that was gonna be my final award. But Chris Paul, man, hope you end your career. Hope you end your career at least on a happy note.
Hey man, like I said, I was doing all the. It wasn't even like insane digging, but like you said, like it feels like all the Chris Paul stuff happened. Like it feels so much further away than where it actually is. It happened only like a month ago. And
Yeah,
instead, this is something that like still is lurking around. And I think the NBA trade deadline is going to tell us a lot about whether or not it comes to an end or if it's just going to be this really abrupt finish to his career. But I was just sitting there looking at it. I'm like, dang, bro, the way we viewed this situation with Chris Paul is not as happy of an ending as we thought coming into the year.
yeah. Now
And
he's trying to
I don't
find
know,
that
that's
happy
just
ending.
surprising to me.
No, 100%. Hopefully he does find like a place where he can at least end his career on a high note. Jay, my final award, again, probably not as serious as my other ones. I'm calling this the FTP award. And what
Okay.
FTP means, for the plot. I'm calling this the For the Plot award.
Okay. Okay.
And this goes to the team that in an ideal NBA world, we call this the good ending. They're doing everything possible to make sure that we are in the good timeline of the NBA. And the winner of this award to me is the Indiana Pacers.
Okay.
Because for the plot, for the NBA moving forward, this is exactly what needed to happen for the Indiana Pacers. Tyrese Halliburton, obviously horrible that he goes down with injury. But the fact that the Pacers, one, traded for their pick pack the day before Game 6 of the NBA Finals last year, and now are, I think, the worst record in basketball. Having that turnaround is absolutely crazy. But the fact that this is basically the equivalent to the Spurs in 1997, losing David Robinson for the entire season, and then coming out with Tim Duncan next year. Jay, this is the Pacers' redemption story. And everything that's happening to the Pacers, starting from that year and including to this year, yes, they have not played great basketball. Yes, it took 13 straight losses for Rick Carlisle to get his 1,000th win. But for the plot, they're doing everything they need to. They're gonna be last in the league. Tyrese Halliburton's gonna be back next year. Who knows if they're gonna do a dead man math or a trade or anything. But the fact that you're gonna have him on the roster with Pascal Siakam, with this team that you know can do well in a playoff setting with Andrew Nemhard, with Obi Toppin, with TJ McConnell, all these boys. But the fact you're able to add, hopefully, again, if it goes their way, they're doing all they can for the pod right now. But adding an AJ DeBonza, adding a Cam Boozer, adding a Darren Peterson, adding that sort of player to this team is like the perfect storybook ending for this team. It ended horribly, but we're now into the next chapter, and they're doing everything right in terms of steps along the way to get to that point. I'm really hoping this team gets a number 1 or 2 pick. I'm really hoping so. I've never rooted for a team so much that's not my own team to get a top pick. I want the Pacers to do so. And in terms for the For the Plot award, I'm awarding it to them because they're doing everything right now to get to that point.
I love that because I also think that it's so interesting the idea of being able to pair really any of those three top guys next to Tyrese and Pascal, right? Because I think that in three totally different ways, you get a completely improved Indiana Pacers team one way or another.
One
And
million percent.
it's not just, and I know that sounds very like candid, like just on the surface of like, oh well, duh, Jay, you're adding a top three pick. Of course they're
Yeah.
going to be better. No, but it's the fact that they can be better in three totally different ways, as opposed to like it feeling like there's an ideal guy that needs to be the pick for Indiana
Yeah.
to take the step into being, back where they were, or at least some semblance of where they were the last two seasons, right? Because Darren Peterson is an upside guy who can play point guard and shooting guard. Gives you somebody else that can be an offensive engine in the backcourt next to Tyrese, while still being able to put Andrew Nembhard on the bench, and it gives you this three guard rotation where you're like, oh
Insane.
snap,
Yeah.
we're insane, and it of course makes Benedict Mathurin, a legit trade chip this year, because you know that there's the opportunity for that. AJ DeBonta, I think he would fit really well in transition next to Pascal Siakam, for example.
The athleticism on the wings would be, him and Obi, if you're like flanking both of them, going for a lob, insane.
I mean, it's definitely pick your poison in transition if he's playing next to Obi for sure. But even somebody who's like very efficient as a transition scorer in Pascal Siakam, and you have a passer like Tyrese Halliburton to help get everything jump started. I mean, and I would make the argument that maybe Darren Peterson's the best scorer in the half court of the three guys, as far as like pure all-around three-level scorer. But I think AJ DeBonta gives them a certain level of physicality in the mid-range area as a post-up guy and things like that. That's very like Pascal Siakam-esque, but not super redundant either.
Yes.
And then Cam Boozer just answers their center problem, which is just like the biggest thing they kind of need to address.
Honestly,
Cam Boozer would be like, if you had to put them in a pecking order, I think Cam Boozer would be the best as far as a seamless fit right out the gate. But any of those three guys would fit really well because they've got guys who are willing to share the ball. They got guys who can all triple pass shoot. And they have a coach in Rick Carlisle who knows how to bring the most out of dudes as well, which I think gets them in a really good position. This is one of those teams, you say for the plot, this is one of those teams I really hope does get a top three pick. Like, there's some teams where like, there's this certain funny storylines associated with them where it's like, for example, the Oklahoma City Thunder, if they were to get a top three pick from the LA Clippers draft pick, that would be hilarious. Or like the Atlanta Hawks, if they land a top three pick because of the New Orleans Pelicans pick, or how the Chicago Bulls team seem to always end up seventh in the lottery every single year, right? There's always those. But this is an Indiana Pacers team. You look at the Indiana Pacers franchise, quite frankly, right? They don't pick up that high very often. If really at all, I don't think in their franchise history.
Ben Mathurin probably in their last 10 years was the highest draft pick they had.
Yeah.
Probably in the last 10 to 15 years. Because even Paul George, if you think about it, was a 10th overall pick. So he wasn't even like, exactly.
This is a team I would like to see draft in the top three just because like we've never seen an organization with this level of structure, this level of overall put togetherness, whether you're talking about having a star player, a secondary player, a high level coach, an organization that's invested in building, right?
Exactly.
We've never, like, there's not too many iterations of a team that's like went this long without being able to draft this high while having this good of an infrastructure. The Spurs have drafted this high the last 3 years. And have had this kind of infrastructure, to build upon themselves. The Oklahoma City Thunder have had multiple hits at the top of the lottery while having this kind of similar infrastructure. Indiana is one of the few franchises that I think you could put up there as far as top to bottom, ran very well, organizationally, coaching-wise, and player development-wise, that just hasn't gotten the chance to really take a swing at a guy that's a blue-chip dude out the gate.
Oh, no, 100%.
I'd love to see it.
No, 100%. And what I like about this, too, and I love that you mentioned that, Jay, that, like, when you think of these top picks and you think they go to the worst teams, you have to remember that, like, when you think of the Wizards, Jazz, all that stuff, when they take top players, it feels like they have to have that whole franchise on their back. Now, for someone like with the Pacers, the pieces are in place. And the fact that all three top picks can fit almost seamlessly into that Indiana Pacers lineup is... If you're one of AJ DeBonta, Darren Peterson, or Cam Boozer. And you could probably say something for the Hawks too, because they have a lot of pieces there already on that team,
Yeah,
which you want
yeah.
to be a part
I
of.
think
But
organizationally, their issue is
yeah,
just that, like, they've been very interesting as far as picking a direction for a
direction.
very
Exactly.
long time.
Exactly.
Even
Yeah.
dating back to like the Landry Fields initial days of just like to trade Trey Young or not to trade Trey Young and all these other like
Yeah.
debates after the 2024
Indecisiveness.
playoff
Yeah.
run.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot
so
of indecisive.
Indiana's just been a model of consistency for, I mean, Lord knows how long. I mean, even those Victor Oladipo years, they were
Yeah.
way up. They were playing way above expectation on a year-to-year basis. Finished as a fourth seed a few times during that time
They
frame.
took
Pushed
the
the Miami
LeBron
Heat to six
Cavs.
games. What was it?
Yeah.
6, 7 games,
Seven
right?
games. 7 games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I
So
mean, like they've always organizationally been deserving of like a blue chip guy to really raise their level. And they got it through Tyrese Halliburton in the most uncharacteristic of circumstances, but through the draft, we just haven't seen it from them.
yeah, and that's why if I'm one of these top three guys, I want to be in that Pacer locker room. I want to be competing right away. And that's why I mean this is why I'm giving them the Ford Applaud Award. It's helping them out because it's taking okay, we're having that Spurs gap year. Now that we can add like the number one, number two, number three pick. And now we have a team that's ready to compete next year with one of these blue chip guys. I think the plot is right there, and they're on the right in the middle of like where exactly they're supposed to be. They just have to complete the journey, and hopefully the ping pong balls go their way.
Totally. I completely agree with that. I think Indiana will be a. You talk about one of those teams, like when we talk about comeback player of the year and different stuff like that. Like Indiana as an organization, I think next year, like everybody's going to have to pay a ton of attention to them because this fall off feels warranted. This feels like one of those where it's like, all right, Indiana, you've been good for so dang long.
Honestly,
It's time to humble things down. It's time to get you guys a blue chip guy. It's time for you guys to, finally, get a chance to pick at the top of the lottery. Like it was fine. It seemed like again, you may even mention it. Making the trade for your 2026 first round pick, like the day before everything happens. It feels like all the storyline, like you said, for the plot.
yeah,
All the story feels like we're leading towards like, yo, Indiana's supposed to get a top 3 pick in this draft.
it's lining up completely, and I'm all for it. Hopefully, it continues to go their way. They win my For the Plot award of the first half of 2020 of the 2025-2026 season so far. Let us know what you guys think down below. I think this is a fantastic episode. Obviously, you're going to hear a lot of podcasts doing the normal award show and all that good stuff. Hard to really navigate to honestly do all these injuries, but we want to hear your thoughts. You can pick your own awards if you want to like give a different winner to any of our awards. We want to hear your thoughts down below. Jay, it's been another End to a Fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Hey man, if you guys like more ideas like these ones where we take a unique take on stuff that is typically discussed around the NBA and kind of put our own flip on it, like give us some suggestions. I actually kind of preferred this a lot more. I don't know how TV felt about it. I'm sure he'll kind of, speak his piece towards the end of the pod too, but like I'm not gonna lie, I actually enjoyed this version of the award show almost as much as I enjoyed like the regular standard awards, just out of the fact that it allows us to take a different approach to how we view the state of the league this year. I mean, there's a lot of names I think that we brought up today as far as award races are concerned that like you just would not hear on a normal award show podcast, right?
Yeah.
I also think another thing that really helped is just the lack of redundancy. Me and TV talked about it before the podcast started. Like MVP feels a little straightforward right now. Rookie of the year feels like it's a two-man battle. Coach of the year might be a really interesting conversation along with like most improved player, but like you name like 3 to 5 guys for each of those categories, and you feel kind of like boxed in by that group because of the fact that like the consensus is this or that, right? But creating our own categories, funny names, more standard names, whatever it may be, it kind of opened the pool up a lot more and it allowed us to kind of look at the league in totality as opposed to like, okay, who's doing the best right now in the
Yeah.
NBA across the board? That's of course the guy that fits the, you know what I mean? Like, okay,
Yeah.
for clutch player of the year, okay, who's got the most scoring? Who's got the most scoring per game in the final
The club.
2 minutes
Yeah.
in crunch time? You know what I mean? The type of things that you can pull a stat for, and it just okay, that's easily your front runner for the award, right? I feel like this was a much better experiment, a much more fun experiment, and I'd like to do this with a lot of other, topic ideas, and I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say as potential topic ideas, where we can do something similar to this.
100%. It was definitely a super fun episode. We're midway through the season. There's a lot more season to cover, and as you can see, we're willing to like go through take a lot of different takes on different topics like we have done in previous years. We've been a lot more creative in that sort of aspect, and I'm definitely more open to that idea moving forward. We want to hear your thoughts down below. Obviously, in the next couple of weeks, trade talks are going to be escalating like crazy, so you're going to be able to log into that with the Hit Your Free Throws podcast. But a lot of stuff going on. You want to make sure you're locked in. You log into the Hit Your Free Throws podcast. You'll get different topics that you won't find on any other podcast, and you're gonna be able to find it over here. And you're gonna be able to find us every other week. So make sure you check us out on all of the different social networks. All the links will be found in the description down below. Again, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. You'll find us everywhere, so you have no excuse not to find us. So continue to show your support in any way possible. Again, we are so close to the 100 subscriber mark over on YouTube, so make sure you check us out there and hit the subscribe button. Thank you all for your support. We'll be back again next week to talk more basketball, talk more trades, especially coming into the trade deadline. And yeah, should be a fun season upcoming as well. Hope you all have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.